Hello and welcome back to another episode on Grey BN. So Donald Trump have won the 2024 US presidential election, which a lot of folks saw coming. The buzz is that his victory is largely due to the struggling American economy, and many believe Kamala Harris didn't have a solid plan to turn things around, opting instead to stick with Biden's plans and strategies. There's no doubt conservative leaders are gearing up for a comeback. One of Trump's top priorities seems to be tackling illegal immigration, as he's made it clear that he plans to send undocumented immigrants back to the US to not invest as much as the US in the NATO. And many countries do not invest as much as the US in the NATO, and that might be a problem. He also mentioned putting tariff on import to America, which will affect the world and especially the UK, while they fear the loss of free trade and affect the Anglo-American alliances. He's also claimed he could resolve the issue about what Trump future plan really entails. A lot of Hollywood celebrities have been expressing their sadness over the election outcome. And many have shared their thoughts showing that the media does not always have the power to influence public opinion. Some folk Kamala Harris campaign took a hit when she brought artists like Keir Starmer, Nigel Farage, Nathaniel Yahoo Zelensky, and Modi have congratulated him. While Putin has chosen to stay silent, Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B for support. On top of that, Biden's comment about Trump supporter being garbage might have stirred up quite a bit of controversy as well. One leader like Keir Starmer, Nigel Farage, Netanyahu, Zelensky, and Modi have congratulated him, while Putin has chosen to stay silent, reflecting last time they had high hopes for Trump to mend ties, which didn't pan out. So they're not holding their breath this time. On one hand, the Israeli government is celebrating, possibly anticipating more freedom in their actions, while on the other hand, some Gulf leaders are optimistic about Trump's return, hoping he might be the key to resolving the Middle East crisis. Trump will be taking the Oval Office in January and has a lot on his plate with so many expectation riding on him. We're going to discuss how Trump will manage all these expectations. America being on a very crucial point and also with a widespread conflict and uncertainty in the world, and he has vowed to fix it all. We also have a new speaker today with us, Sanya Gades. She's been professor of mass media, also worked as a talk show host and executive producer for 10 years with radio host and researcher with BBC. So we're going to Sanya to express our opinion about this whole situation.
Yeah, I don't think that it came as a big surprise to us here in the U.S. I think if we were looking at it just from a visual standpoint, and that's what we're kind of basing it on, because not most Americans are sitting down and doing all the research on policies, right? She came across as very inauthentic. Changing her accent to please the crowd, sometimes using playing up on her black heritage and sometimes using her Indian heritage. So it was a mixed bag of what she was saying, and it wasn't always um, the truth. And I think a lot of people took offense to that. Um, Whereas Trump, he has always spoken his truth unfiltered, so you know what you're getting with him. And as we've seen with the Biden administration, Kamala is just going to be doing the exact same thing that he's been doing. And yes, I think that the war in the Middle East and Gaza has not helped Kamala, and I think that actually hurt her quite a bit.
A lot of Americans also think that Kamala is just an extension of Biden's government, and which a lot of people are not happy with. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're looking at the policies that the Biden administration had, nationally and internationally, Kamala hasn't changed her stance on any of the current Biden's administration's policies. So really what we were going to get was more of the same. And I think as Americans, we were sick of more of the same. So it was almost expected that it would be Trump, because whether you love him or you hate him, I think Americans are ready for a change.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Do
Anyone
you
else want
think
to?
Sanya, do you actually think that there was a lot of people say Trump voters are racist? Would you consider so many people to be racist, or do you think it's just deeper reasons? There are deeper reasons why Trump basically won with a landslide.
Yeah, I do absolutely think there are deeper reasons. When we look at sound bites of people who are Trump supporters, you'll only see racist sound bites, right? You'll hear something that will get headlines. But I think the deeper reason is America, Trump's whole premise for the campaign was America first, right? Putting America first, American citizens first. And us in the US, we agree with that, that the money that we're spending on unnecessary wars that are not ours could be used to help um, education. Education is very expensive in the US. To help healthcare, we have the worst healthcare system in any of the free world. The poverty line, we, as somebody who, a country that's a superpower, should not have the kind of poverty that we see in the US, but yet we have $20 billion to send to Israel to fight a war that isn't ours.
So, do you believe that when this entire situation with Kamala was a bad choice in regards to who they were pitching in front of Trump, or was this a situation where it was about a candidate? Uh, okay, there's no option besides Trump. That is why people voted for Trump.
Well, there was a huge, we never usually vote third party. And I think Jill Stein got 0.4% of the votes, which is the largest amount of votes for a third party ever. And so that's been huge. Putting Kamala out there to run was not only just a mistake because you're just saying the same as the previous president. Also, you have to keep in mind that the voters that are coming of age now are a generation of social media. So we know what's going on. We have access to what's going on globally and nationally. So when you hear the same rhetoric Kamala spewing that Biden was, we're educated enough through social media that we know we can decipher what she's saying is just um, the same, more of the same. And with Trump, you're actually getting, whether you, like I said, he might not come across as the most polished person, but I think most Americans can relate to that.
So, do you think Trump was able to use the social media in a better way as well? Because it seems like Kamala Harris was missing from a majority of social media as well as podcasts. And do you think Elon Musk has a role to play in this? And if so, how large is that impact?
So I'm not sure what role Elon Musk is actually going to play or how much we can buy into what's being said now. We've got to remember politicians only, for the most part, are only going to tell you what you want to hear. And so they'll use buzzwords and anything that's going to get people to get on board. But now with especially because I'm teaching this social media class, you can see the power of something like TikTok to influence people's votes. So it's not more about Kamala not being available on podcasts. It's more of the unscripted social media platforms like TikTok, where you get to see kind of like behind the scenes, unfiltered versions of what's happening. And so we got an access to that. And the majority of Americans are on these social media platforms. So they didn't actually have to see her on a podcast or hear more of what she was going to say. Her being ingenuous, I think it was almost demeaning to women of color, women in general, to changing up accents, to using phrases that she thought would work. And I think that you could see the how ingenuous that was, and that backfired.
Hmm. So I'm going to now bring in Amir Ghori into the conversation as well. Mr. Amir Ghori, you've heard what Sonia Gardez has said, and if you go by Trump's first election campaign and the second one, it seems to be a very different situation. So, is there a lot more playing in this in terms of the Western society or United States in particular going through some major issues in regards to people feeling alienated to an extent? As some people are pointing out, that might be one of the reasons. What do you consider in those? Go ahead.
Thanks, Declan. I was listening to Sanya. Interesting take. But when we see America from Europe or from Asia, America remains the most important country, and that's why, because America has the ability and capability of disrupting governments and destroying societies. So whatever American president does has implications. A long time ago in history, we used to say whenever France sneezes, the whole Europe catches cold. Now that basically is true for America now. That whenever they actually want to go in any part of the world and wreak havoc and destruction and war, they will do it with impunity. Nobody can stop them, and that is why it was very important. Means I'm not going to discuss what actually happened in the elections, but there were some interesting points. Like for example, almost I don't know how many millions, maybe 41 millions or something like 14 million. I'm not going to clear on that. The youngest voter, the Gen Z voters, and they were expecting that 8 million of them were the first time voters. So that means I don't know how many of them have polled their votes or not. But what concerns me is that when I was studying in Europe and used to travel to America, we used to kind of look towards the younger politicians who became the president, like Clinton, and then relatively Bush was pretty young, and then Obama, very young, and now American politics has come to a stage where you have septuagenarian, almost dinosaurs walking. Look at Biden. He was so botoxed, as if he was a dead man walking. You basically zombie here and there. And we used to say that how can these guys who cannot say words properly are running the strongest power in the world? And then the way Sani was saying that all those 4 years we did not see Kamala Harris as a vice president. She was like, if I can use the term, the masi, जो
Yeah.
घर में होती है ना रोटियां पकाने वाली.
Yeah.
She was kind of go from one door to the other, one room to the other, and you can say that masi मैं शाम को रोटी नहीं खाऊंगा, that sort of a thing. So वो जो masi है ना, वो बेचारी in the last moment she was thrust into this campaign that, listen, since I'm uh, you know getting myself out, you go ahead and fight. The thing is, what frightens me is that as leader of the democratic world, and of course the strongest power in the world, both these parties, Republicans and Democrats, do not have credible leadership. And for me, even in 2016, when I was covering, President Trump, Donald Trump's first, attempt to become the president, I was marked at his outside his, campaign headquarters on Fifth Avenue outside Hilton. And I was discussing with the American journalist that how come this businessman has been allowed to completely, decimate the Republican Party and won the nomination, and he has done it again. Means although he has gone in these 4 years, gone through the court procedures, there are cases against him, and now he'll get the presidential immunity, and he will not be being dragged to the courts. But thing is, at 78, and he will be 78 and some 7 months by the time he will get into the White House again. This time, if when I was listening to his victory speech, he looked tired, and he must be tired. The last few days when he was running around in these battleground states. So what is interesting me is that I actually want to see from now what will actually happen in 3 to 4 years time. For example, he said that, listen, I will not start new wars, and I will try to kind of finish the wars which are already, draining American economy. So that means on top of that is the Ukraine-Russia war. Now, if you stop that, what is the message you are giving to, Vladimir Putin? That he can basically do whatever he wants in that area and get away with it. What
I,
is the message you will give to China, for example? And the Chinese and the Russians, the way they are, propping up the game in this part of the world where we are, in terms of SCO and in terms of BRICS, they are now taking control of the global economy, the global politics. And tomorrow, if, for example, Africa is already in their camp. So if tomorrow, let's say the Europe's 27 states, if they decide that, listen, we have enough of American wars and American-led wars, and we do not actually have an economy or the courage to go and start wars and receive body bags. So if they become slightly neutral, in tomorrow's international relations, America will be a country which will be 4,000, 8,000 miles away from the world. Now, Trump, for example, from we need to see what is his plan. I will just kind of wait to make any comment because he's still 3 months away from White House. He will take charge the way Maham was saying in January. That is the tradition in America. I would actually kind of wait and see who makes his team. Who he picks up. If he picks up the old dinosaurs like people like Ramsey Khalilzad to run our part of the world, Afghanistan,
mm,
Pakistan, Iran, whatever, and Saudi. It will be very interesting. Whether Mike Pompeo and characters like him will come back, the warmongers. So whatever he says, that I will finish wars, I will again repeat that 7 or 8 weeks ago, the second lead on the front page of Financial Times was that the military-industrial complex in America is expecting a boom time. Huh?
mm,
So that means people have already planned for wars, and where those wars will be fought, wars will be fought, in our neck of the woods.
mhm,
They will not be fought in Europe or in Southern America. They will be fought here. So I think whether Trump, whatever he says now, his task would be to regenerate, reinvigorate American economy, and that the biggest thing for me is that over the decades, American economy has shifted to countries like Vietnam and Philippines and East Asia, making them the tigers. For example, if you decide to bring back the manufacturing and all those things back to America, in last 40 years, Americans have not done that. America will not actually have the trained HR to run those plants. So it is, it easier said than done. The way we are seeing in our part of the world that politicians, and I'll remind your viewers that once a stupid journalist like ours actually asked Churchill, the former British Prime Minister, what's the difference between, he said, okay, what is the definition of a good politician? And Churchill said that, a good politician is a person who can sell promises to people, and then he should be able to sell reasons why those promises could not be kept. Hmm?
mm.
So that means it's an endless game of, lying to the people, to the electorate, to the voters. And that is why I think that if, for example, in 2.5 years' time, Trump fails to deliver on his promises, to make America great again, maybe Democrats who are again devoid of leadership may throw the third woman in the game, which is Michelle Obama, you know. And at that time, he will be gone, Trump. But maybe, the way I'm seeing it in the last 8 to 10 weeks, I am amazed and also frightened of the body language of Elon Musk. At times he can say that, I have given $130 billion to my friend's campaign. What if tomorrow he says that, listen, if Trump can, take control of Republican Party, why can't I not? I have more money than him. I'm younger and I'm more bolder than him. At least more organized when he is talking, and he's pretty clear what he actually wants from this world. So I think interesting time. When we talk more, because his coming to presidency has implication for our part of the world, and we will discuss it, in the course of your program.
I'm just going to interject and then I'm going to sign off because my class is waiting. I just wanted to say that it doesn't really matter who you put as the person that's leading the campaign, because at the end of the day, the both of them are backed by APAC, right? So they're going to say the things that sound correct, but they're always going to have the same policies because they're funded by the same organization. And what has happened in recent years, especially this last year since October 7th, is people have picked up their news not from news stations but from social media. And so when we see Kamala and we see Trump, and they are both funded by the same organization, that intrinsically nothing is going to change. So it's interesting that from outside of the US, people are looking and still thinking that we are this superpower, where within the US, I think we see us imploding. We see it falling apart. And I think that's happening because Gen Z is asking questions. And this whole movement in this last campaign to vote third party was pretty monumental. It hasn't happened before. And so we haven't been able to make any real changes in our policies and politicians and the way that we live our lives. Nothing's really changed. But the perception that we have of the US within the US is that it is imploding. The way that things have always worked are not going to work coming forward. And that's why I think Trump has had to change his language a little bit when he was talking about Muslims just recently and referring to them as friends. Whereas in his last campaign, he was, having the Muslim ban. He had a good PR team that helped him reword a few things. And whereas sound bites that we were getting from Kamala were where she would be met with protesters coming back with a condescending remark like, be quiet, I'm speaking now, when she was asked about a genocide. So those kind of things are impactful and they're powerful and they stay on people's minds, especially when you have access to social media and you can see them on repeat and the algorithm will show you what it is that you want to see. So I don't think it's going to make a difference whether it's Elon Musk or whether it's Michelle Obama. We saw what Obama's presidency did, nothing. So what's going to have to happen is a fundamental change in who is backing our politicians. Because the one thing that Trump has right is that it should be America first. It should be us funding education, our healthcare, helping people that are impoverished, and not just a shiny looking globe from the outside. Because outside we look very pretty and polished, but if you come in and see the realities of the U.S., it's parts of the U.S. are worse than developing countries. There shouldn't be hunger and poverty in a country like the US, but there is. And so we, the Gen Z, the generation, that is actually going to make a difference, is seeing through that. And I think it's going to be a huge shift.
But before you sign off, Sanya,
Yes.
if you can also comment on that. Listen, what we saw in Palestine and Lebanon and Syria and that
Yeah.
part of the world, over the years, we saw that in the last 4 years, all these areas were destroyed. People, innocent people were murdered with impunity on Biden's watch,
Hmm.
and say they have suffered to the extent that we did not see Kamala Harris had the courage to kind of go to places like Dearborn, in because she know that if she goes there in Michigan, she might be heckled, she might be basically, spat at or whatever.
Or
But thing
questioned,
is,
even
yeah,
questioned. She wasn't prepared to answer questions regarding that.
yes, yeah, she's came across very limp on even American, networks. But my question is that the way you mentioned, Obama did not kind of change the policy, you know. So I don't think that Trump, when he comes into power, when he becomes the president, he will be able to stop Israel from doing whatever it is doing in the Middle East. And you never know that Pentagon might actually come up with another plan because the guns which have to be sold, the oil which has to be controlled, because America does not need Middle Eastern oil, but they actually want their companies, which used to be called the Seven Sisters, and five of those sisters were American.
Right.
They actually want those sisters to sell those oil and gas to countries like China and India. So they actually want control of Middle East and resources. I think Trump will actually have to prove that he had the mental and physical capacity to take on these two men who are sitting very tight in Beijing and Moscow. And I
Right.
think, times ahead would be interesting for the American public, who, the way you said. And I remember, when I was driving through states like Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin, the towns and small towns and villages, they look like ghost towns. They
Right.
do not have an economy, you are absolutely right. They were worse off than many of the third world countries,
Hmm.
which used to be the, different capitals of different industries, like in Akron, like the rubber, all these Farrelly, Bridgestone, Parelli factories were there, all gone, So there is no economy. And when he says that, he will make America, so maybe he will just going to start a new musical band and start singing songs of praise.
Maybe he will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really see much changing in terms of, you know, I can't be too optimistic about what changes Trump is going to make that he promised. All I know is that we kind of predicted this win. And
Yeah.
I don't think many people were surprised that he won. Um, he just had a good strap line, put America first, whereas, I think everybody
So how come
wants that
how
to be
come
true.
how come all the networks completely fell on their face?
Yeah. I mean, you know what? It's because we expected people not to go for the Democrats have always appealed to or always went after the college educated population, right?
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
wanted to, they thought they'll do that again and they'll come up on top again. And I think Americans are sick of just hearing fancy words that we have to look up to understand or policies that we're not familiar with. And
yes,
so when Trump speaks, he's speaking to the common man. He's speaking a language they can understand.
yeah.
And so I think he just came across as somebody that we can engage with and is much more personable. Whereas Kamala just came across as somebody who was condescending and speaking to was what we were beneath her. And I think that was the general consensus. And I think that the pollsters got it wrong totally. But some of
I
the psychics got
I
it
think it was
right.
because most of them were biased. Most of them were biased on purpose.
Yeah, I think yeah, you know that most networks are set with an agenda, and so they're going to push one poll, and CNN is going to be Democratic and Fox is going to be Republican, and we kind of expect that to be the case. But remember, I have to keep coming back to the fact that we're not getting our news from news agencies anymore.
No,
Gen
no.
Z is getting their news from
Hmm.
social media, and social media was predicting this loss all along. And so, regardless of what any of the pollsters were saying, I think the people on the ground knew this was not going to be the case, that we knew that Kamala was not going to win.
so
Also,
so
because Kamala didn't address the main problems in US, while Donald Trump did that, like economy, the immigrants, and these were the problems America was facing right now. And Donald Trump focused on that, while Kamala was still stuck in being black and black women and abortion. It actually shows that. Trump was actually his female voters have increased
Yep.
surprisingly, especially his Latinos and Black female voters have increased. Why? Because I think the Democrats did not realize that women do not vote on one issue basis. They thought that we will stick to abortion and they will
Yes.
just vote for us, but that did not happen.
Yeah. They underestimated a woman's mind. I mean, we're not a single issue voter. And, Kamala
And
thought that
also,
she could solve that.
women run the kitchen. They run the economy of a household. They,
Yeah.
they're better suited to discuss, what is basically impacting their families. Whether who it does not really matter who's bringing the money, but because they are running the economy,
Right.
and they are much more thinking machines than men, and that is why. Uh, Trump, even his popular vote this time. Last time he was 3 million
Yeah.
short. This time
Yeah.
he's,
He won by the popular
almost
vote.
6 million, up than Kamala.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you for having me on today. I'm just going to go ahead and try to teach my class something now. I will speak to you guys soon. I hope the
We could
conversation
have been
goes
your
well.
students.
They're right here.
No, I said we could have been your students.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
You can join my
yeah.
class anytime you want to.
All right.
Thank you for
thank
this. Have a
you
great
very
evening.
much, Sonia. Thanks a lot for coming and really
Absolutely.
sharing
Take
with you.
care.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.
So I need to
Hi.
say something first. Amir, sir, so the thing is that what J.D. Vance said about this whole Ukraine and Russia thing, according to J.D. Vance, Ukraine should let go of all the occupied territory to Russia and forget about joining NATO. That's the only way to resolve the situation. So what Trump is doing is he's trying to sway Putin toward himself so that Putin and the Chinese government are not friends anymore, because Donald Trump also said that he's going to tax China 60% tariff on every on all the imports because well, it's a trade war if they attack Taiwan and stuff, and it's a situation like that. So he's planning to attack people on trade basis.
I don't think China will fight any country, because they believe, and because they are 4, 5 thousand years old civilization, living civilization. They know that the wars deplete countries. They push them back by hundreds of years. But China, what China is very intelligently doing is one that they are doling out loans to any country in every country which wants the loans. And as the book, one of my
As a,
favorite books. So, Clan, you're saying something?
as a return, they take over the ports,
Which one?
like the Montenegro port, the Sri Lankan port. They just take over the ports. Very
Uh,
clever, very clever. I'm not denying that.
and that is, if, for example, remember that Indian Ocean, you'll actually see the American naval bases. You will see the British naval bases. Uh, you have seen the French. All those former colonies are keeping their military presence there. So, for example, when China was thinking of the BRI, they wanted strategic places where they can, station their navies and also their, commercial interest, because like a country which is 1.5 billion, 1.45 billion, they will need all the resources in the world, whether they're coming from Brazil or Argentina or Middle East or Africa. So they actually need those things, one, coming to China for whatever manufacturing. They are the behemoth of manufacturing behemoth in this world. They actually want all those things safely passed from the Indian Ocean to South China Sea. And because China, the way it is developed over the decades, the eastern and the northern China, that is the developed part. And that is why they were thinking of developing the southern and also the western China. So that's why they were talking about throwing routes to via Pakistan in the form of CPAC, via Afghanistan, Iran, to the Persian Gulf, and via Central Asia to uh, straight into Europe. They are seeing this world as their big, you know, they actually want to be the sole vendor. They want to kind of sell their stuff, and the world will be their market. And that is why, as far as
Yeah,
Taiwan is concerned, Taiwan and Japan can, live in Chinese shadow in the coming decades. But China, the way you said, they have presence. They will actually have presence in Gwadar in Pakistan. They have presence in Colombo, in Hambantota. They have presence, in Far East. They have presence in Aden, in Yemen, and also in Oman. So they are not going beyond that, because they know where the raw materials, largely the raw materials will be coming, and then they actually want to secure, you know, these waters.
I have a comment to make. Uh, now, my question would be like everyone's fearing Trump's uh, tariffs and the way he's basically saying that he's going to impose all these tariffs and taxes on imports from various countries. But if you look at majority of these countries, what you'll find is that they're already implementing huge amounts of tariffs on American products. For example, the iPhone is manufactured within India, but India charges huge amount of tariff, not even 20%. At times, it's 200 to 300% in those regards. So, wouldn't that be classified as fair? Even with China, American products, when they're like imported within China, even though they're manufactured in China, they place them under huge tariffs.
So, Glenn, when it comes to economy, there are two kinds of economies. One is the economy which impacts the state and state's policies, and the other economy is impacting people and their pockets. China is not interested at this stage in getting technologies like superconductors and the space technology or whatever. America can lead the way, and Chinese will wait to reverse technology. Whatever products America will come up with its brilliant and far ahead in terms of research and development. As far as the global pocket is concerned, China is interested in that. For example, if all of Asia, all of Middle East, all of Africa, and parts of the 27 state European Union, the smaller states like Romania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Slovakia, whatever, as their markets. So China can, slowly take control of that, and America can focus on its, advanced technologies. And this is not actually kind of going a game which will end in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. They are in a civilizational competition. And that is why in the last program, when we said that, Chinese are interested in connecting with the civilizations of the past. And that is what President Xi has been talking, more than once. That he talks about the Indian civilization, he talks about the Persian civilization, he talks about the Greek civilization, the Italian civilization, the Turkish civilization. He does not kind of say that there is a thing called American civilization. No, America is too young as far as these states, these civilizations are concerned, and that is why she, traveled to all these capitals and basically telling them that listen, we are not the fighting kind. We will not fight you, and that is the difference between us and the Americans. They do not, attach conditions where they are giving out loans that we actually want your countries to democratize or turn into a socialist communist states. No, they said give us contracts. Usually want us to build
But
bridges or
then,
railway lines, whatever.
but then the question would be, if that is the case, we've seen just in the past week or so, Japan is increasing their defense budget. In the UK today, they've basically said they need to increase their defense budget. When we look at Vietnam, we look at countries like Philippines, they've increased their defense budget. When we talk about India, India has directly increased their defense budget in relation to China. They've gone as far as basically even stating, I think both Jay Shankar and Narendra Modi have been repeating this on countless times, that now the Chinese and the Russians are doing joint project in terms of defense. So we need to look for alternative weaponry as well. And if we look at the Chinese influence in various countries, like for example, in recent times, we've seen that in Eritrea in Africa, we've seen Russia stroke China kind of collaboration developing in Central Asia. And they seem to be working in cohesion. And not to forget the North Koreans. That's another example which I would like to bring to your and others' attention as well. That whenever the North Koreans or Kim Jong has made an international appearance, mostly whenever he's traveled outside of North Korea, he basically happens to use the state plane from of the Chinese government. The CCP basically empowers him in various ways. So again, it seems like China seems to be very well equipped, both strategically, economically, technologically, and not to forget that in terms of defense, they happen to be all over the globe right now. So even if it might be in terms of defense, I think we have to realize that no empire or no global hegemon in the past has ever taken that place without some kind of conflict. So why would China be any different? And even if China was so passive, uh, do you think the United States or the West or the NATO countries are going to let that eclipse occur just out of nowhere without any hesitation or knowing their past and just let it happen and let everything slip out?
So, Gladys, this is a very long-winded question, but I will try to basically, piecemeal, try to deal with it. You know, this is the only thing which America can offer to these countries: defense and defense contracts. You start with Australia and Indonesia, and then Japan, and Vietnam because it was destroyed by the Americans, South Korea. But that is the only thing on offer to these countries. American economy is not linked now with these economies. And when you talk about China, China was a global economy along with India, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, 200 years ago. And that is why, these people came to this part of the world to do business. The thing is, China is now sort of the way we used to say America is the only country which is an international labor neighbor to all of them. Why? Because they would bring their naval ships, aircraft carriers, and place them in the sea and basically beat everybody down. Now, China in the last 50, 60, 70 years has not fought a war. By saying that tomorrow they fight a war, why would they fight a war if they control your economies? They would not. It does not going to make sense. Why? Because if who would destroy one of his markets by going to war? If, for example, you kill people, you kill your, tomorrow's customers. So if you see that from east, to almost Afghanistan, China is a neighbor to every single state. So that's why China, you basically, when you say the hegemon, America comes to these shores, to these waters to fight a war, to destroy a country, and they have a long history. The Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Afghanistan War, the Yemen War, the Pakistan War, the Afghanistan War, the Soviet Union. So what we're saying is that, listen, America does not do business with these countries. They have been destroying through war, weapons, military industrial complex is the only thing which America is interested in selling. And for example, by creating a bogey of China's tomorrow's, intentions or day after tomorrow's intentions, imagine just, you have read, must have read hundreds of articles, and I have, that the Americans are propping India against China. It will never happen. Why? Because the land border between China and India is the most difficult, geographical border to fight a war. Look at the size of those mountains. They are not European hills. We are talking about mountains which rise to almost, 20,000 feet on average. Who will actually fight the war? And then the economy, $120 billion economy between India and China. And out of that 120, in China is raking in 100 billion. So the thing is, when Trump walks into his office in 3 months' time, he will actually have his plate full. One, his domestic problems are so big to take care of them. How will he take care of them? By saying that he will change. We had, a loony pop in Pakistan, Imran Khan. The moment he came to power, what he, promised people that I'll give, 10 million jobs, and then I'll give 5 million households. Not a single house was built in his 3 years 8 months. I don't know what will be President Trump's, who is an extreme example of narcissism. you know he does not actually have to deliver anything. He just wanted to say things. He wanted to actually basically settle the score with the Democratic Party, which threw him out. And I don't know how he will behave with the Democratic Party and its leaders who have basically done him bad. The thing is, his issue of economy, his issue of unemployment in America. We are now in a phase where countries like America and Europe are telling the young people that they listen, we do not actually have jobs for you in the market. The jobs, you actually have to be self entrepreneurs. So you basically sit at home, work from home. Excuse me, that model will not work. Unless you actually kind of go to the offices, unless you go to the factories, you cannot build a car, or a machine sitting at home. If you're in service industry, maybe or sitting.
I understand that, but okay, I'm also going to bring in Aditya into the conversation.
Aditya is quietly listening.
Yes,
That
I
is,
have no
yeah,
idea
that is
why you
frightening.
are thinking,
That is
Aditya.
frightening.
I have very few things I think I can contribute in this discussion. Like, few things
We
that I
want your
have
contribution,
prepared.
Aditya. You cannot walk away.
Few things, yeah, yeah. So few things that like since the results came out, I have like three or four points that I wish to bring up that I found to be very interesting about the results, and these are kind of my observations. Like it's not like it's not heard of discussions, but not the main narrative that we are discussing or we are seeing around the internet. So the first and most important the thing that I'm seeing in these elections or after these results, and you also have I'm sure like you have observed the rise of, it's very obvious, the rise of the populist right wing politics in the last 10 to 15 years, which is like very evident now that the right wing populist narrative is it's not just affecting like countries like India or Pakistan, which again is going very populist right wing. You have your Imran Khan's very populist, very like probably some a little right wing, but still a populist right wing leader. India has our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, again populist narratives and right wing. America got your Donald Trump, very populist right wing. Europe also has a very rising right wing politics, which wasn't expected like 10, 15 years ago. But the right wing in Europe is like the fastest growing uh, politics in the last 10 years possibly or more. So the first point I believe is the rise of the populist right wing globally. It's a global trend, and these populist leaders come up with like easy explanation to very complicated issues, like narrative. What are the main speaking points of Donald Trump? As somebody like Amit sir, you or like we people on this panel, let's be honest, we observe politics more than a regular person who has a right a job or have some like sports interest or like any other hobbies. We are more, we observe politics more than those people at least. So we understand like if you hear any of the interviews or like anywhere where Donald Trump has spoken in the last 8 years, it's the same talking point. We have to make America again, America great again, build the wall, right? Uh, cut the taxes, grow the economy, and tax the imports, like penalize China. All these populist narratives and like easy explanation to complicated problems. They talk about inflation, but they don't tell you that all these tax breaks, when you bring down the tax and when you increase the flow of money in your economy, it's not rocket science that other economies don't understand it. They do, but when you increase the flow of currency in your economy, it's an inflationary tactic. Whenever there is more money in your economy chasing fewer products, it's inflationary. When you implement uh, taxes on imports, again it's inflationary because your the products that you buy becomes expensive. So all these ideas are inflationary. Again, like to come up from this observation again, the left wing and the liberals globally need populism. Let's be honest, like left wing populism, you don't have to explain everything like Kamala tried to do. Like we'll give you $15,000 if you want to start your new business, or if you want to buy your homes, we'll give you $10,000. People don't want like these explanations. They want populist ideas, simple, catchy, easy to understand, and kind of that that like simple explanation to complex problem. Another thing that they brilliantly did, and all these right wing populist leaders are trying to do, and it was evidently very evident in the like come up to the elections, that they try to portray themselves as outsiders. Like are you like joking me? Is like Trump an outsider? Like, he's a billionaire, and he portrays somehow he's an outsider. So also, like, the world's richest man who supports him is also an outsider. Like, Elon Musk is outsider. He also got, like, very favorable views from people like Jeff Bezos. Mark Zuckerberg came out and, like, declared himself as a libertarian, which is exactly right wing. So all these tech bros are supporting him. Donald Trump is going to all these Bitcoin and cryptocurrency events, which trying to say that, I support all these ideas. So it's all the, like, whatever kind of deep state or billionaires or money people, you are in all those circles. You can't call yourself, like, outsider, but people don't care until and unless your narrative is selling. If you are populist, if you keep repeating those things, people will buy it. So I think, like, the last point I want to talk about this issue is, like, you also, Amir sir, and uh, you people have discussed this earlier. The last point is the loss of the young vote, especially because of what happened in the Gaza and the genocide. So I think, like, they lost a lot of young voters who have, like, we have seen from the trends, who were with time becoming more and more liberal and left leaning. And from the surveys that I have observed, 45% of the young people have voted the Republicans, or to say, for Donald Trump, which is huge. Like, you had this share for the Democrats was around 70%, sorry. So you lost almost, like, 15 to 17% of your vote bank to the Republicans. Those people did not just not vote you, but they voted the other side. So which I think is the biggest loss to this party. So these are my observation. I think, like, some of these can be corrected, but I don't see any change at the moment. It's a populist ride, and I think, like, it's only going to increase the populism globally, because America is, let's be honest, is the most.
I have a question. So basically, I've heard what you've said, and all that is what everyone else has been saying as well in those things. So you're in cohesion in terms of your views. But my question would be, why are people all of a sudden, like we had Tanya Gardes as well, and I remember in time when Trump was being elected, Tanya Gardes was very vocal against Donald Trump and his rise and everything else. But it seems like even segments who happen to be from ethnic minorities are buying into this entire thing now. Including in the UK and Europe, you've seen all these riots. So don't you think that as a whole, whether it's ethnic minorities or it might be that it's the mainstream people in the West, they seem to be ignored. There are issues, there are real issues, and each time people have spoken against those things, whether they happen to be from the ethnic backgrounds or they happen to be mainstream indigenous people, or in America's case, the white people, the Caucasian people, it seems like they've been referred to as racist, and at times they might have genuine concerns. And that is why popularism is rising, in my opinion. But you might have a different take on that, and then we'll go to Amir Gori and then Maham as well in those regards, and to basically find out what exactly has happened in that way, and if Trump was to deliver on even some of this stuff, is that going to have an impact or not? Go ahead, Aditya.
So, 2 points, and regarding both the wars that are currently happening, and let's be honest, like, let's look behind quickly the reasons behind it. The Ukraine Russia war. What is Trump promising to the world? So, just yesterday I was having a discussion with my friend. He called me and he was like, now he's a right wing populist kind of guy. So he told me that, now Donald Trump will end the war in Ukraine, and I was so surprised. And I was like, how would he end the war? And he was like, he'll talk to Zelensky, he'll talk to Putin, and he'll, bring an end to this war. And I was like, do you understand what will be the outcome of that war? It will be basically surrendering the Ukrainian land to the Russians and accepting it. It's not a resolution, it's surrendering and it's a defeat. So when you come up with these populist ideas, like, when Donald Trump tells you that, he'll end the war, he basically means he'll surrender the lost land to Russia. So it's not a big deal. Like, the Democrats could have done it earlier. Even Russia and Putin tried to, like, negotiate a deal, like, just after, like, probably it was through Turkey, Amir sir, if I'm not wrong, within 30 days. It was within 30 to 60 days. Turkey, Erdogan was trying to mediate a ceasefire, but it was the Western world who disagreed and said that, you can't change borders by war. It hasn't happened that a global, like, world hasn't accepted any land which has been taken by war, which was an international border accepted by UN since 1945, since the establishment of the United Nations. So when Trump goes out and tells you that, he will accept a deal which will be about surrendering a land which Russia has won by war. So it will be new, setting new precedent in the global order. It will tell the world that you can take the, somebody else's territory by war, and the world will accept it. It will be a first in the last 75 years. Coming
But
back to
that's
the
an external view. But internally, what my question was, and I think we can like switch between
so
languages
the
now.
point was again the same thing. It's the populist idea that, when you go
No,
out
but
and say end the
it
war.
might be a populist idea, Aditya. But
Aditya,
there's
Aditya, एक second. Shaji, Aditya, do you know that Donald Trump annexed the Golan Heights to Israel in the last
But
time
it
he was
was
president? Golan Heights were
but
actually,
but the
it was
but
originally
the world,
Syrian territory.
UN and most
It
of
was
the world
taken by
doesn't.
the Israel, but it was still annexed to Israel.
But
He can do
the world
that.
doesn't accept. But the entire region has been occupied since 1947, 48, since the war between Palestine.
that is fine. But
Yeah,
in terms of
it
Trump
wasn't a
elected
specific
and the
country.
populist and the populist vote being the main reason people going there. But it doesn't. We can't still ignore the fact that there's a reason these people have voted for Trump. They must feel something is wrong. It cannot be out of the blue. People do
About
feel
what?
ignored. People feel angry.
Yes, they do, and it's justifiable. Again, about the Gaza issue, the Hamas. Let's be honest, they attacked Israel because of, things which were happening prior to that, like Abraham Accord, which Donald Trump initiated, and they felt that, our cause will be lost. I'm not condoning the act, but there is a, like, reason behind this madness coming from Hamas. They almost knew that, the Saudi Arabia and the Middle East were about to accept the Iranian regime, and were about to establish, like, relationships with them. A lot of countries already did in the Middle East. So it was initiated by Donald Trump, but it's a populist narrative. I'll end all the wars. So so people believe that it's easy, it's simple, it's not complicated. You buy it.
Okay, so same question to Amir Hori. Like, do you think that people have voted for Trump because they feel ignored? And what are the real reasons? Why do people seem so angry? We've seen riots in the UK in recent times due to similar notes. People said majority of those people protesting or rioting are people who happen to be racist. But I don't buy that because the amount of people on the British streets happen to be humongous. And I saw all kinds of people with all kinds of backgrounds along those streets in those protests, which turned into riots. So people do feel angry, in my opinion. And same goes for United States. And there's a huge contrast, and that's my question, Mr. Amirwari, that from the first campaign of Donald Trump to this second campaign, there seems to be a huge contrast in terms of reception. He's even won the populist vote this time around. Go ahead.
If you allow me to kind of switch the language now, because
जी
Sunny
जी
has gone.
या
देखें, बहुत सारी चीजें जो है ना, ये पिछले आप जो 4-5-7 मिनट की आपने टॉक की है, उसमें बहुत सारे इश्यूज जो है ना, दे वर रेज्ड. देखें, एक तो मतलब मैं आपको बताऊं कि जो पुराने फिलोसफर्स हैं ना, वो भी ये कहते थे कि जो रिलीजन और नेशनलिज्म, ये लास्ट रिफ्यूज होता है स्काउंड्रल्स का. जिस वक्त उनसे काम नहीं हो रहा होता ना, अब इन मुल्कों ने जंगें लड़ लड़ के बंदे मरवा मरवा के अपनी इकोनॉमी का खुद बेड़ा गर्क किया हुआ है. और अब इनके पास सिर्फ अल्फाज है बेचने के लिए. लेकिन सवाल ये है कि देखें, जो फैक्ट्स है ना, दे कैन चेंज नैरेटिव्स. नैरेटिव्स कैन नॉट चेंज फैक्ट्स. हमने ये देखा कि जो कुछ हुआ है रशिया और यूक्रेन के दरमियान, एक्चुअली मुझे आप इजाजत दें कि मैं पहले उसको डील कर लूं, कि जिस वक्त सोवियत यूनियन टूटा था और उसके अंदर से 14 मुल्क निकल आए थे, तो एक अंडरस्टैंडिंग ये थी कि अमेरिका ने वॉर तो लड़ी थी अफगानिस्तान में, और अफगानिस्तान में 8-9 साल की वॉर के बाद जो रशियन सोवियत इकोनॉमी थी वो कोलैप्स कर गई. ठीक है ना. अब उसके पास वो 7-8 हजार जो ICBM पड़े हुए थे, इंटरकॉन्टिनेंटल बैलिस्टिक मिसाइल्स विद न्यूक्लियर टिप्स, none of the missile was fired at America. Technically, both enemies were fighting superpowers. इसलिए उनको पता था कि उसका जो नुकसान है वो ज्यादा होगा. तो सोवियत यूनियन agreed, or the Russians agreed to let the country go, and break down. अब उसमें उन्होंने कहा कि देखें, चूंकि फौरी तौर पे एक छोटा मुल्क अफगानिस्तान को कॉन्कर नहीं कर सका सोवियत यूनियन, तो कल जो फौरी तौर पे फीलिंग थी ईस्टर्न यूरोपियन मुल्कों में, जो वॉर्सो पैक्ट के मुल्क थे, यानी बेसिकली प्रोटेक्टेड बाय सोवियत यूनियन, के अगर तुम्हारे पे नेटो कंट्रीज ने हमला किया तो हम तुम्हें प्रोटेक्ट करेंगे. एंड दैट इज व्हाई दे मूव टैंक्स इनटू हंगरी एंड चेकोस्लोवाकिया और व्हाटएवर. खत्म हो गया सारा, कुछ नहीं हुआ. जिस वक्त रशिया जो है उसके अंदर से देखा ना, रशिया ने सेंट्रल एशिया के किसी मुल्क के ऊपर हमला नहीं किया. ऑल दीज 10 कंट्रीज, उज्बेकिस्तान, ताजिकिस्तान, दिस्तान, दैतान. ठीक है. मसला क्या था यूक्रेन के साथ, कि आहिस्ता आहिस्ता वो तमाम मुल्क जो टेक्निकली पहले वॉर्सो पैक्ट के मुल्क थे, लेकिन जब आहिस्ता आहिस्ता उनको पहले यूरोपियन यूनियन में दाखिल किया गया और फिर उनको नेटो में दाखिल किया गया, तो रशिया को बताता रहा कि भाई आपके साथ बातचीत हुई थी कि देयर सर्टेन कंट्रीज व्हिच विल बी केप्ट एज बफर स्टेट्स. नेटो जो है वो हमारे बॉर्डर पे आके नहीं बैठेगा. व्हाई? बिकॉज नेटो इज अ मिलिट्री अलायंस, एज अगेंस्ट SCO और ब्रिक्स जो हैं, ये रीजनल अलायंसेस हैं, इकोनॉमिक अलायंसेस हैं, पॉलिटिकल अलायंसेस हैं, दे आर नॉट मिलिट्री अलायंसेस. अब जिस वक्त आप ये कह रहे हैं कि यूक्रेन को हमने शामिल करना है इसके अंदर, तो इससे पेशतर कि वो काम होता, पुतिन जो है ही वेंट फॉर एन बेसिकली प्रिएम्प्टिव वॉर. अब उसमें जो दोनों तरफ से उसने जो अटैक किया, एक तो खुद अटैक किया, दूसरा जो अपना दूसरा एलाय है बेलारूस, उसकी तरफ से जो अटैक्स हुए, पिंसर मूवमेंट बनाई है ना, और वो लुहांस्क के अंदर, डोनेट्स्क के अंदर, क्राइमिया के अंदर. अब उनका ये कहना था कि इन सारे रीजन के अंदर जो लोग हैं, they want to be more close to the Russians than to the Ukrainians, है ना. अब वो जो जंग है, फौरी तौर पे अमेरिका ने एक चांस देखा कि दिस इज अनदर चांस टू ब्लीड रशियंस, in as far as economic strength is concerned, military strength, political strength. अब इतनी करने के बावजूद जो पुतिन है वो तो वहीं बैठा हुआ है, वो कहीं कुछ नहीं हुआ. उसने अपनी जो है वो गैस बंद करने की धमकियां दी कि जर्मनी, फ्रांस, इंग्लैंड को गैस बंद कर देंगे, और इन्होंने कहा कि नहीं हम अल्टरनेटिव वेज देख रहे हैं. देखें, जिस तरह अभी आदित्य कह रहे थे ना, किसी फिलोसफर ने बड़े अरसे पहले कहा था कि द इजीएस्ट वे टू एंड वॉर इज टू एक्सेप्ट डिफीट. ठीक है ना. और उसके बाद फौरी तौर पे आप ही देखें. अब मुझे इस तरह लगता है कि ये जो बाज इलाके हैं जिसके ऊपर रशिया ने कब्जा कर लिया, क्राइमिया जैसे, ये जो बाकी दूसरे, उसने ही इज बेसिकली गॉन बैक इनटू यूक्रेन, टेरिटरीज होल्ड की हुई हैं, हो सकता है वो वापस भी कर दे, बट अंडरस्टैंडिंग ये होगी कि गारंटीज दी जाएं कि यूक्रेन जो है वो नेटो का मेंबर नहीं बनेगा. ठीक है ना. अब उसके अंदर अगर फर्स्ट किया वॉर खत्म होती है, बंद होती है, सवाल यह है कि इन वॉर्स के अंदर अमेरिकी सोल्जर्स नहीं लड़ रहे, उनके बॉडी बैग्स वापस नहीं जा रहे, लेकिन उनका असला बिक रहा है, ठीक है ना। वो कह रहे हैं कि पड़ जाओ उसके पीछे रशिया के, ठीक है ना, तुम लड़ो, जितना असला चाहिए हम तुम्हें देंगे, जर्मनी से देंगे, फ्रांस से देंगे, इंग्लैंड से देंगे, यानी उसको छोड़ें। यहाँ पे जो बातें चल रही थी वो ये था कि पाकिस्तान से जो वेपनरी है वो खरीदी गई बाज यूरोपियन मुल्कों के एंड एंडेड अप इन यूक्रेन। और लोगों ने यहाँ पे डिस्कशन किया कि यार पाकिस्तान जो है इट इज ट्राइंग टू बी क्लोज टू रशिया, बट उनके जो वेपन्स हैं दे आर एक्चुअली एंडिंग अप इन यूक्रेन। सारे लोग जो है वो चांस देखते हैं इस तरह का। गन्स जो है वो इतनी सस्ती चीजें नहीं होती, वेपन्स इतनी सस्ती नहीं होती, तो इट इज अ गुड वे टू मेक क्विक मनी बाय नॉट बीइंग इन्वॉल्व। अब सवाल ये है कि अमेरिका की इकोनॉमी जो है ना वो तो इस जंग से उस तरह इम्पैक्टेड नहीं है जिस तरह रशिया की है या जो डिस्ट्रक्शन यूक्रेन में हुई है। दूसरी दूसरी तरफ जो वॉर है ना, आई डोंट सी इट एज अ वॉर। जो कुछ 7 अक्टूबर को हुआ था लास्ट ईयर हमास के साथ, अब जो पिछले ऑलमोस्ट 44,000 लोग जो इनोसेंट फलस्तीनी मरे हैं वो तो हमास के जो है सोल्जर्स नहीं थे। उसी तरह अगर आप देखें कि अगर फर्ज किया कि अटैक जो है वो हिजबुल्लाह करती है और अटैक जो है इसराइल जाके लेबनान के कैपिटल पे करता है, लेकिन लेबनान की आर्मी नहीं है, वो रिटेलिएट नहीं कर सकती। नो, उनको पता है कि उनको मार पड़ेगी और इसलिए पड़ेगी कि अमेरिका जो है वो सपोर्ट करेगा। तो सवाल ये है कि देखें ये जो इम्पैक्ट है इस वॉर्स का वो इसलिए ज्यादा हुआ है, टू बेसिकली टच योर पॉइंट सकलैन, वो ये था कि देखो इनके अंदर जो सारी की सारी जो इमेजेस है ना वो ग्लोबल टेलीविजन नेटवर्क्स ने दिखाई हैं सारी दुनिया में। अब बच्चों का मरना, औरतों का मरना, बुजुर्गों का मरना, पूरी की पूरी पॉपुलेशन जो है उसकी डेसिमेशन, तबाही जो है वो नजर आई है आपको सारे यूरोपियन न्यूज नेटवर्क्स के ऊपर, अमेरिकन न्यूज नेटवर्क्स के ऊपर। लेकिन इंसिडेंटली आई वाज स्पीकिंग टू समबडी इन इजराइल, वहां ये सारी चीजें नहीं दिखाई जा रही। अगर दिखाई जाती, ठीक है ना, कि भाई इजराइल ने क्या किया है फलस्तीन के अंदर, क्या किया है उन्होंने, वो अभी तक प्रोपेगेंडा पे खेल रहे हैं। यानी इजराइल टेलीविजन पर, आई वेंट टू इजराइल इन 2006 टू कवर द वॉर, तो मैंने इनसे पूछा, मैं कहा भाई वॉर किधर है, जेरूसलम में तो पार्टियां हो रही थी, टेल अवीव में तो पार्टियां हो रही थी, ठीक है ना। तो उन्होंने कहा नहीं नहीं, अगर वॉर आपने देखनी है तो वो मिसाइल मार रहे हैं वहां जाके, आपको ना हाइफा में और नारिया में देखना है, ऑन द नॉर्दर्न टाउन्स। अब उसी तरह ये है कि बहुत सारे लोग जो हैं, इवन इंटरनेट जो है वो ब्लॉक्ड है। टेक्निकली इसराइल जो अपने आप को डेमोक्रेसी कहता है, इट इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट क्लोज्ड कंट्री। वहां लोगों को नहीं पता कि उन्होंने किस तरह बुचरिंग की है वहां पे लोगों की। अब उसमें सवाल ये है कि जिस तरह सानिया अपने प्रोग्राम में कहती कि एपैक जो है वो चलाता है सारे लोगों को, उन्होंने पैसे दिए हैं, वो भाई उन्होंने 250 साल जो है इन्वेस्टमेंट की है अपने ऊपर, इसलिए कि उनको कुट पड़ती थी सारे यूरोपियन मुल्कों में। स्पेन के अंदर कुट पड़ी है, ऑटो द फेयर की जो सजा है, अपना जो क्रिश्चियन कंट्रीज थी, ये जिस वक्त जंग होती थी कुट पड़ती थी यहूदियों को। तो नेपोलियन वॉर्स के बाद इनके सारे बाबे बैठे, उन्होंने कहा यार मेरी बात सुनो, we actually have to do something, इसलिए कि लड़ते क्रिश्चियन कंट्रीज आपस में और हमारे कुट पड़ जाती है तो हम क्या करें। उन्होंने कहा ऐसे करते हैं ना, बड़ी जबरदस्त एक किताब है इमेंसिपेशन माइकल गोल्डफार्ब की, इट टॉक्स अबाउट हाउ the elders of the European Jewry, they sat down and said, listen, we actually have to change our outlooks, we have to change our clothes, the way we should not be visibly Jew if we want to live in Europe. And that is why उन्होंने कहा कि within 100 years we started attracting again animosity from the mainstream Christian societies. जिस industrial revolution आया, why? Because they were ahead of the contemporary Europeans who were Christians in science and technology, in banking, in music, in studies, whatever, science, physics. और आप ये देखें कि पिछले 150-200 साल में उनका इन्फ्लुएंस है। वी कैन उनको डिस कर सकते हैं कि ये इन बदमाश जो हैं ये पॉलिटिक्स को यूज करते हैं और पॉलिटिशियंस को यूज करते हैं टैक्टिक्स के, बट by being a very small minority they have worked really hard. Thing is कि उसका जो इम्पैक्ट है, ये जो बाकी मुल्क है ना, ये जिम्मेदारी जो बाकी सो कॉल्ड मुसलमान मुल्क बैठे हुए, इनकी भी कोई जिम्मेदारी है कि नहीं है, या ये सिर्फ बैठे हुए हैं इब्राहिमिक बनाने के लिए। ये एक पूरी इस्लामिक समिट बुला के ये तो कह सकते थे कि भाई हम आपके तेल हमको आपको बेचते हैं, प्रोडक्ट्स हम खरीदते हैं आपकी, यानी दुबई, सऊदी अरेबिया, कतर, ये हाई एंड जो बायर था ना दुनिया की महंगी तरीन ब्रांड्स के। तो अगर फर्ज किया कि उनके साथ डिस्कस करते हैं कि यार ये जंग तो बंद करवाएं, जितनी हरामजदगी की है इसराइल ने, इसको जंग को बंद करवाएं, नहीं करवा सके, मेरा अपना ख्याल है कि देखें जंग अभी भी बंद नहीं होगी, जो मर्जी करते, उसने डेसिमेट तो करवा दिया, और कितने बंदे मारने हैं। कभी उस बेचारे उन्होंने वो जो बेचारे इस फिलिस्तीनियों को कहा कि नॉर्दर्न गाजा में चले जाएं, उधर बमबारियां की, फिर उन्होंने कहा नहीं नहीं नीचे चले जाएं, रफा का बॉर्डर खुलने नहीं दिया, ठीक है ना। असल जो इस जो क्रिमिनल हैं इस पूरे वॉर में, वो तो जॉर्डन और जो है इजिप्ट है, ठीक है ना।
हमें भी बात बात ये है कि आई एग्री विद आपकी सारी बातों से मैं एग्री करता हूँ, लेकिन इसके अंदर एक इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्टर ये है कि यूक्रेन की तो वॉर को हम इस तरीके से देख सकते हैं, आई डोंट नो व्हाट्स गोइंग टू हैपन, लेकिन अगर हम मेगा प्रोजेक्ट्स और चाइनीज जो स्पेशली न्यू सिल्क रोड है जिसको पाकिस्तान में सी पैक कहते हैं, और चाइनीज एज अ होल वन बेल्ट वन रोड इनिशिएटिव बोलते हैं, उसके अगेंस्ट अगर आप देखें तो अमेरिकन की और वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज की भी एक थोड़ी सी इन्वेस्टमेंट आपको नजर आती है उसके पैरेलल, और वो आपको जो पैरेलल उसकी सिनारियो में चीजें नजर आती हैं, उसमें रेलवेज हैं, उसमें और चीजें हैं, और वन ऑफ द थिंग्स व्हिच अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल हैव बीन सजेस्टिंग इज कि हिजाज रेलवेज इज वन ऑफ दोज प्रोजेक्ट्स जो कि ऑल द वे फ्रॉम इजराइल टू नोएम सिटी डेवलप हो रहा है, एंड इट्स अ वेरी फिजिकल थिंग, एंड जितने व्यूअर्स हैं और जितने लोग हैं वो इस चीज को जाके चेक भी कर सकते हैं, उसके आपको वीडियोस भी मिल जाएंगे, उसके कंस्ट्रक्शन के डील्स, उसके नेगोशिएशन in terms of what it is. So a lot of people said उसके बीच के अंदर गाजा आता है, और जहाँ पे गाजा आता है उस जगह के ऊपर ऑब्वियसली उन्होंने वो वाली डेवलपमेंट होने नहीं देनी थी, so they flattened the entire thing in many ways. This is one of the things which is floating these days. और वो फ्लैटन करने के बाद जब पूरा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डिस्ट्रॉय हो गया, एट सम स्टेज they're going to look for a ceasefire. And what better players than Saudi Arabia and UAE to come in and basically suggest, as there's already stakeholders and happen to be Muslims, कि जी हमने ceasefire के अंदर जितना होना था वो हो गया, अब हम rebuilding करते हैं यहाँ पे, and they will basically get that association and those contracts in terms of redevelopment and try.
लेकिन सकलैन देखो, ये लॉन्ग टर्म स्ट्रेटजी जो है ना, ये इसलिए कामयाब नहीं हो सकती कि एवरी फ्यू इयर्स जो इसराइल है ना, वो जाके इनका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर तबाह करता रहा है। अगर फर्स्ट किया मैंने जाके उसमें नई बिल्डिंग्स बनानी है, दोबारा से जो गाजा है उसको रिकंस्ट्रक्ट करना है, मुझे पता है ये 2-3 साल के अंदर फिर जो है इसराइल इसको फ्लैटन कर देगा, ठीक है ना। तो मतलब व्हाई वुड आई गेट इन्वॉल्व, द थिंग
लेकिन
इज
अब इसके अंदर एक डिफरेंस है कि इजराइल इस सारी सिचुएशन के अंदर एक स्टेक होल्डर है। अगर फॉर एग्जांपल वहां पे वो डेवलप करते हैं, एंड इट्स रियली सैड दैट इट हैड टू हैपन इन दिस वे एंड दिस इज हाउ दे वेंट अबाउट इट, इट शोज कैपिटलिज्म at the highest level, and I think Trump भी इसी चीज को फर्दर ऑलरेडी, अगर आप अब्राहमिक अकॉर्ड को डिटेल के अंदर पढ़ें तो उसके अंदर इस तरह की कोहेजन और इस तरीके की collaboration and business involvement or diplomacy, all these things are very much highlighted with, in fact all of these things including mutual projects are an entire section which is discussed in Abrahamic Accords. और अगर फॉर एग्जांपल इजराइल इसमें स्टेक होल्डर बनता है तो दे काइंड ऑफ अचीव्ड व्हाट दे वांटेड टू अचीव, नो?
नहीं, लेकिन देखें ना, मेरी बात सुने, इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिक्स में आप जो है अगेन नैरेटिव के थ्रू लोगों के अंदर डिविजन्स पैदा करते हैं। आपने ये डिवीजन देखी इराक के अंदर कि उन्होंने कहा कि इराक के अंदर जो है एक तो शिया सुन्नी की लड़ाई चल रही है। जब इन्होंने तोड़ दिया, सद्दाम हुसैन को मार दिया, तो उन्होंने कहा कि आधे के अंदर तो शिया सुन्नी का झगड़ा है और बाकी फिर कुर्दों का है। अब कुर्द जो है वो ना सुन्नी थे ना शिया थे, ठीक है ना। तो उन्होंने इस तरह किया कि जो कुर्दिस्तान जो कि 4 मुल्कों में टूटा हुआ था, उसमें से सिर्फ इराकी कुर्दिस्तान को आज़ाद करके उसको इराकी किरकुक ऑयल दे के उसकी इकॉनमी खड़ी की, और वो जो दोनों टाउट थे उनके, मसूद बरजानी और जलाल तलबानी, उनको वहाँ लीडर बना के वो तेल निकाली जा रहा है अमेरिकी कंपनियां डेक चैनी की, और वो बेची जा रही है, ठीक है। उसी तरह अगर फर्स्ट की आप बात कर रहे हैं ना, जो इसराइल का प्लान है 2035 का, ठीक है ना, उसकी सारी डिटेल्स इंटरनेट के ऊपर मौजूद हैं। वाई? बिकॉज वो जो 6 कॉरिडोर्स हैं रशिया के, अपना चाइना के, ठीक है ना, उनकी इकोनॉमी को अपनी तरफ से काउंटर करने की कोशिश है। नो, इट विल नॉट। वाई? बिकॉज देखिए, चाइना के जो 6 रूट्स है ना, वो हॉरिजॉन्टल भी चल रहे हैं, वो वर्टिकल भी चल रहे हैं, ठीक है ना। इनका तो एक रूट है ना जो कि मुंबई के पास से कहीं से निकलेगा, अगर फर्ज किया जब भी निकलेगा, और उन्होंने कहा वहां से लेके वो जाएगा जी पहले दुबई तक तो जाएगा ना, मतलब वो इट विल बेसिकली समुद्री रास्ता है, और उधर से वो सड़कों पे चढ़ेगा और फिर वहां से लेके और लैंड रूट के सऊदी अरेबिया और जॉर्डन में से होता हुआ और फिर इसराइल के अंदर से एक पोर्ट हाइफा की होगी और दूसरी पोर्ट जो है वो नई बिल्ड करेंगे जो गाजा के अंदर, ठीक है ना। एंड देन वहां से आगे उनके लिए जो मेडिटेरेनियन है उसके जरिए ये ईस्टर्न यूरोप में जाएगा ना। दिस इज वेरी एम्बिशियस प्लान। व्हाई? इसका मतलब है कि वो सारी की सारी इकोनॉमी को किसके साथ जोड़ना चाह रहे हैं? इंडिया के साथ। हो सकता है इंडिया जो है वो इस वक्त मैक्सिमम बेनिफिट लेने के लिए वो एग्री कर ले, लेकिन वो कल कह के भाईजान हम एक इंडिपेंडेंट मुल्क हैं, हम आपका जो गेम है वो नहीं खेल सकते। पर दरमियान में ईरान आता है, दरमियान में सी लेन्स के ऊपर पाकिस्तान आता है, ठीक है ना, गवादर पोर्ट है, चाइना है, तो वो उसमें ये कहना अमेरिका, देखिए अमेरिका चूंकि जैसे मैंने कहा कि इट इज अ कंट्री विच इज थाउजेंड्स ऑफ माइल्स अवे। अब नेक्स्ट टाइम उसको फटा करने के लिए इस इलाके में जब आना पड़ेगा ना, तो उस वॉर के लिए जो इकोनॉमी है वो अमेरिका की इकोनॉमी इस वक्त नहीं है कि वो इतनी इतनी
तो
स्ट्रांग
हमें
बड़ी।
हमें तो फिर एक और क्वेश्चन यहाँ पे ये बनता है, हम वन रोड वन बेल्ट इनिशिएटिव के बारे में तो यही शुरू से सुनते आ रहे हैं कि इट्स वेरी फार फेच्ड। अगर आप देखें तो ईरान, पाकिस्तान में भी वो किन जगहों से गुजर रहा है जहाँ पे इतने ज्यादा इश्यूज हैं, टू बिगिन विद ऑल द वे फ्रॉम ग्वादर टू पीओके या आज़ाद कश्मीर। तो उसके अंदर भी लोगों को काफी खूब सारे मसले हैं। तो
नहीं, लेकिन वो तो एक रूट है ना, वो देखें वो एक रूट है। जो फर्ज किया जो चाइना का जो दूसरा, मैं आपको बताता हूँ, जो चाइना का दूसरा रूट है विच इज ऑलरेडी ऑपरेटिव, विच इज द इंडिया बांग्लादेश रूट, इट इज गोइंग, उस पर काम हो रहा है, कोई डिस्कशन नहीं कर रहा, सी पैक नहीं चल रहा ना, लेकिन वाया
लेकिन भाई रिसेंट टाइम्स के अंदर जो बांग्लादेश वाला रूट है उसके बारे में भी तो लोग यही बात कर रहे हैं कि दैट इज व्हाई देयर हैज बीन अ regime change on behest of United States in बांग्लादेश। शेख हसीना का भी यही मैसेज था।
मसला ये है कि देखें ना, अमेरिका जो है वो उन तमाम मुल्कों के साथ जो उनकी मोहब्बत बढ़ती है, वो उन मुल्कों के साथ मोहब्बत नहीं है उसकी, वो बेसिकली उसकी एनिमोसिटी है टुवर्ड्स चाइना, ठीक है ना, कि चाइना जो है उसका जो एक्सेस है टू द इंडियन ओशन उसको रोका जाए, ठीक है ना। उसी तरह जिस तरह जो इंडो चाइना वाली मतलब रूट था, उसके अंदर भी नीचे उन्होंने लोगों को कहा हुआ कि भाईजान आप जो चाइनीज हेजेमोनिक डिजाइन हैं वो आपको उड़ा देंगे, आपकी इकोनॉमी को उड़ा देंगे। उन्होंने कहा भाईजान हम आपको पैसे दे रहे हैं रूट बनाने के, ठीक है ना, हमने आपके मुल्क के अंदर नहीं घुसना। सी पैक जो है वो टेक्निकली जिन लोगों को नहीं पता, इट इज गोइंग टू बी अ चाइनीज रोड एंड रेल नेटवर्क, जो चाइना की चीजों को ग्वादर से लेके चाइना तक पहुंचाना था। तीसरा जो है जो उन्होंने $400 बिलियन का जो एग्रीमेंट ईरान के साथ किया है, दैट मींस वाया अफगानिस्तान एंड ईरान एंड देन नीचे पर्शियन गल्फ में। जो दूसरा है वह सेंट्रल एशिया, ठीक है ना, जो उसमें से जा रहा है मंगोलिया, सेंट्रल एशिया और यूरोप तक जाएगा, वो ऑलरेडी चलो ट्रेन पूरी चला के दिखा दी है उन्होंने। वो जो आखिरी ऊपर से जो है साइबेरियन रूट है वो ट्रेन चला के दिखा दी, वो चाहे वो 6 महीने में पहुंचे। सवाल ये है कि देखें इस इलाके की जो पॉलिटिक्स है ना, वो अब उसको काउंटर करने के लिए अमेरिका जो है वो आहिस्ता आहिस्ता उसको सोचना पड़ेगा कि क्या यूरोप उसके साथ खड़ा हुआ है या नहीं, और यूरोपियंस को देखना पड़ेगा कि क्या वो अमेरिकन इंटरेस्ट की जो पॉलिसीज हैं उसको जो पुश करके अपने इलाके में, क्योंकि सिर्फ एक छोटा इशू है, देखो यूरोप ने हमला नहीं किया ये जो सारा सीरिया के ऊपर था, ठीक है ना, आइसिस वाला। यूरोप जो है वो इन्वॉल्व नहीं है इसराइल गाजा और इसराइल लेबनान की वॉर के दरमियान, लेकिन जितने लोग डिस्प्लेस होते हैं दे आर एंडिंग अप इन ईस्टर्न यूरोप, ठीक है ना। एंड दैट इज वाई उनकी वजह से क्या हो रहा है, उनकी वजह से जो राइट की पॉलिटी, जिस तरह मतलब आदित्य कह रहा था कि जो राइट विंग पॉलिसीज हैं और गवर्नमेंट्स हैं और पार्टीज हैं, दे आर ऑन द राइज। वो अपनी स्ट्रेंथ पे नहीं है, वो नफरत क्रिएट कर रही है। नफरत किस वजह से क्रिएट कर रही है? इट्स अ वेरी स्ट्रेंज साइकिल कि वॉर लड़ रहा है अमेरिका, यानी इराक और अफगानिस्तान से जितने लोग पहुंचे हैं यूरोप के अंदर और इवन अमेरिका के अंदर, ठीक है ना, वो भाईजान मसला यूरोप की वो पॉलिसी नहीं थी। तो कल को अगर यूरोप कहता है कि भाईजान हमने आपकी जंग नहीं लड़नी, हम न्यूट्रलाइज होने लगे हैं, ये जो नया ब्लॉक बन रहा है चाइना रशिया का एंड बैक्ड बाय सारी की पूरी इलाके, चाइना ने देखे ना 70 साल से सऊदी अरब और ईरान जो है वो एक दूसरे की गर्दन काटने के लिए ऊपर पैर रहे थे। किसी को पता तक नहीं लगा कि चाइना ने उनके लीडरों को बुला के किस वक्त उनकी सुलह कराई है और विद इन 6 मंथ्स उनके एक दूसरे के मुल्कों में जो एम्बेसीज खुलवा दी हैं, उनके फॉरेन मिनिस्टरों ने दौरे कर लिए हैं, थैंक यू वेरी मच, ठीक है ना। अब वो उस रीजन के अंदर पॉलिटिक्स और तरह की खेलेंगे, ठीक है, एक दूसरे के खिलाफ नहीं कर।
अंडरस्टैंड। अब हम एक और साइड के ऊपर चलते हैं, जो आप यूक्रेन की बात कर रहे थे। उसके अंदर भी अगर आप देखें तो यूक्रेन वाज वन ऑफ द कंट्रीज जिसको यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स वाज नॉट ओनली यूजिंग अगेंस्ट रशिया बट आल्सो यूजिंग अगेंस्ट चाइना। जितनी डीकपलिंग हो रही थी चाइना के अंदर in terms of tech, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of biotech stuff, as well as weapons, वो सारे तो यूक्रेन के अंदर बनने स्टार्ट काफी हद तक होने स्टार्ट हो गए थे। एंड दैट वाज अनदर फियर जो रशियंस को एकदम से हुआ कि दिस इज राइट ऑन देयर डोरस्टेप।
इस
और
तरह से
इसमें मैं एक और चीज ऐड करना चाहूंगा, एंड दैट इज व्हाई आई एम अ फर्म बिलीवर कि चाइना इज नॉट एज पैसिव एज पीपल से और पीपल थिंक। अब आप देखें कि अभी उनको मौका नहीं मिला अटैक करने का, और उन्होंने अभी तक अटैक किया नहीं है। लेकिन इनडायरेक्टली तो अभी जितनी चीजें हमने डिस्कस की हैं उन सब कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स के अंदर चाइना का भी आपको कहीं ना कहीं इम्पैक्ट नजर आ रहा है, चाइना की इन्वॉल्वमेंट नजर आ रही है। और यूक्रेन के अंदर सबसे बड़ी इम्पोर्टेंस की पॉइंट क्या है कि नॉर्थ कोरिया के सोल्जर्स are now involved in that war very directly, and it's because of cohesion with Chinese that they're doing that. So who is to say that it's only a matter of time when the Chinese will also lash out, वरना उनको सेकंड होके सबमिसिव होना पड़ेगा।
लेकिन मेरी बात सुने ना, अगर फर्ज किया जिस तरह मैंने कहा आपको कि यूक्रेन जो है वो कहता है कि हमने लड़ना नहीं है, अभी एंड करनी है बातचीत, आखिर बात तक बात करते रहे ना वो कि बाइडेन जो है वो इन्वॉल्व हो, अमेरिका इन्वॉल्व हो। अमेरिका इन्वॉल्व नहीं होता जंगें रोकने में, अमेरिका इंटरेस्टेड होता है जंगों के चलने के अंदर, ठीक है ना। उसके अंदर सारे लोग असला बेच रहे थे, उन्होंने कहा हमारे कौन से बंदे मार रहे हैं, यूक्रेनियन मार रहे हैं, मरी जाए, ठीक है।
जी।
अब सवाल ये है कि अगर फर्ज किया ये वॉर जो है लेट से 2 साल चल जाती है, 3 साल चल जाती है, अमेरिका इस जंग को चला नहीं सकेगा इस वजह से कि उसको अपनी इकोनॉमी खड़ी करनी है ट्रंप को। ये नहीं हो सकेगा कि वो सिर्फ मिलिट्री इंडस्ट्रियल कॉम्प्लेक्स के जरिए अपनी गन्स एंड वेपन्स बेच बेच के और अमीर हो जाए। वो सिर्फ चंद लोग अमीर होते हैं, ये जो मिलियंस अपॉन मिलियंस ऑफ अमेरिकन है, इनको रोटी मिलनी है कि नहीं मिलनी, उसके लिए जो है किस तरह किक स्टार्ट करेगा उस इकोनॉमी को। ये मुल्क जो जंगें लड़ रहे हैं ये लड़ते रहेंगे, ठीक है ना, इनका इंटरेस्ट और है। सवाल ये है जहां से हमने स्टार्ट किया था कि ट्रंप के वापस आने के बाद वो तमाम लोग जिनको ट्रंप के वादों से उम्मीद है, ठीक है ना, जब वो डिसइल्यूजन होंगे तो फिर उसका जो फॉल आउट है, जिस तरह सनिया खुद कह रही थी कि देखें द प्रोसेस हैज ऑलरेडी स्टार्टेड, अमेरिका हैज पीक्ड एंड नाउ इट इज स्लाइडिंग। It may take, another 50 years, another 100 years, because no country is going to attack America, physically. इस वजह से कि they are basically uh, fortified by Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, है ना। किसी मुल्क ने उनको ऊपर जाके मिसाइल नहीं मार रहे। लेकिन सवाल ये है कि अगर फर्ज किया इस तरफ की जो दुनिया है जिसके अंदर अमेरिका जो है वो चाहता है कि उसका जो वाइटल इंटरेस्ट है, टू बी दी सोल सुपर पावर, वो इम्पैक्ट ना हो, तो वो तो अब इम्पैक्ट होगा। और इसी वजह से जब छोटे छोटे मुल्क हैं, देखे ना, अब दुनिया दोबारा से मल्टीपोलर है, मतलब ऑन सर्टन थिंग्स चाइना जो है वो खड़ा हुआ है, सर्टन थिंग्स पर रशिया उसके इंटरेस्ट के खिलाफ खड़ा हुआ है, सर्टन थिंग्स पे इंडिया उसको जो है वो चैलेंज करेगा, ठीक है ना, एंड देन ईरान खड़ा हुआ है। ये तो छोटे मुल्क है ना, ईरान जैसे लोग, लेकिन 40 साल से वो 50 साल से सैंक्शंस बर्दाश्त करके बैठे हुए हैं ना। तो जो इन्फ्लुएंस है, देखें जिस हमने पिछली दफा कहा था कि थोड़ी थोड़े इकोनॉमिक जो एक्शंस है ना वो अभी नहीं, मे बी इन 5 years टाइम, मे बी इन 10 years टाइम विल बिकम ऑपरेटिव। सबसे बड़ी चीज क्या होगी कि सारे मुल्क जो हैं इनका ताल्लुकात यूरोप जो मिडल ईस्टर्न कंट्रीज के हैं उनके साथ इतने स्ट्रांग हो जाएं, यानी 3 मुल्कों के, रशिया के, इंडिया के, चाइना के, कि वो कहें कि भाईजान हमने लोकल करेंसीज के अंदर जो है ना आपके साथ डीलिंग करनी है, थैंक यू वेरी मच, नो मोर डॉलर्स, ठीक है ना। तो अमेरिका की इकोनॉमी जो है ना इट विल बी सीरियसली शेकन, और फिर से जंगें जुंगें नहीं लड़ी जानी। और फिर उसके बाद आपको याद होगा जिस वक्त यू एंड आई यूज्ड टू सेट, जब महातीर आया था लंदन में एंड ही एक्चुअली वांटेड टू रीइग्नाइट द गोल्ड स्टैंडर्ड, ठीक है ना, वो पड़ी, अब वो नहीं कर सका, लेकिन इंडोनेशिया, मलेशिया, ये बड़ी इकोनॉमीज हैं, मतलब उतनी बड़ी नहीं है जितनी लोग समझते हैं, बट मिलियंस अपॉन मिलियंस ऑफ पीपल। अब वो फर्ज किया वो सारे के सारे लोग जो हैं वो उस इकोनॉमिक साइकिल से निकल जाते हैं which was led by the Americans.
सही।
Nobody needs democracy. Nobody, frankly. ये सारे लोग जो है ना ये मुल्कों में they would love to be dictatorship, but if their economy is working. अब अमेरिका जो है उसको ये सोच रहा है कि भाईजान एज ए लीडर ऑफ फ्रीडम, ऑफ ओपननेस, ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी, अगर तो उन्होंने सबसे बड़े किलर तो वो है डेमोक्रेसी के, ठीक है ना। मतलब वो बात और करते, मुझे याद है टोनी ब्लेयर के साथ इंटरव्यू में मैंने पूछा था, मैंने कहा कि मिस्टर ब्लेयर डू यू थिंक इट एंड जो डेमोक्रेसी एज एन आइडिया इट इज सच अ कन्फाइंड आइडिया, ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ नेशन स्टेट के अंदर जो है उसकी बाउंड्री के अंदर ऑपरेट करता है, क्योंकि इंटरनेशनल ऑर्डर जो है वो तो डिक्टेटोरियल है, ठीक है ना, वहां तो कोई डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है। तो उसने कहा दैट इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग टेक। मैं कहा इट्स नॉट इंटरेस्टिंग टेक, जहां मर्जी आप वॉर स्टार्ट करना चाहते हैं, आप यूनाइटेड नेशन को बताए बगैर अपनी फौजें पहले भेज देते हैं और यूएन बाद में दौड़ना शुरू कर देता है। जाली आपने जो है वो डोजियर बनाए हैं, जाली आपके जो मतलब लॉ ऑफिसर्स थे उन्होंने रीजंस बनाई वॉर स्टार्ट करने की सिर्फ दुनिया को बताने के लिए कि ये जी लेजिटिमेट वॉर है, ये नॉनसेंस। तो उस वजह से डेमोक्रेसी भी नहीं बिक रही, वेपन्स भी नहीं बिक रहे, और आहिस्ता आहिस्ता ये लोग हैं ना, देखो इन सारे लोगों को, इन मुल्कों को जिनकी हम बात कर रहे हैं ना, इनको अपनी इकोनॉमीज जो है ना वो खड़ी करनी है, इनके पास रिसोर्सेज हैं। The only thing which they need is to stay away from the American ideas of fighting with each other, focus on their people, and then जो whatever is written for them, वो आस्ता आस्ता उनके लोग जो हैं वो भी, क्योंकि देखा ना बहुत सारे लोग जाके अमेरिका सेटल नहीं होना चाहते सिवाय पाकिस्तानी जर्नलों के, ठीक है ना, जो यहाँ से रिटायर होके अपना पैसे निकाल निकाल के जाके वहाँ अमेरिका जाके बैठ गए और वहाँ प्रॉपर्टी डीलिंग शुरू कर दी उन्होंने, ठीक है ना। बाकी दुनिया के मुल्क जो है ना वो इस तरह नहीं कर रहे।
अच्छा आमिर भाई, इसके बाद एक फाइनल क्वेश्चन एंड देन विल गो फॉर अ क्लोज।
1 घंटा 26 मिनट हो गए हैं, मेरा गला सूख गया बोल बोल।
जी बस आखिरी क्वेश्चन है। बल्कि आदित्य होता तो बहुत अच्छा होता, लेकिन ये क्वेश्चन के बगैर ये शो एंड नहीं कर सकता। इसको शॉर्ट ही रखेंगे, बल्कि मेरे ख्याल से वी कैन डू अ शो ऑन दिस। when the American elections and once Trump was being elected, उसके बाद से इंडियन बहुत इन स्पेसिफिक खुश नजर आ रहे हैं, स्पेशली मोदी सपोर्टर्स बहुत खुश नजर आ रहे हैं। और कुछ पॉडकास्टर्स हैं जिस गौरव आर्या साहब हैं, राजीव दीक्षित साहब हैं, ये जयपुर डायलॉग वगैरह के, इनका मानना कुछ इस तरीके से है, विच इज काइंड ऑफ हिलेरियस, एवर सिंस ट्रम्प हैज बीन इलेक्टेड, कि अब इंडिया जो है, अब मोदी जो है वो मेन प्लेयर बनेगा, और वो ट्रम्प बोलेगा माय फ्रेंड नरेंद्र मोदी, कैन यू गो टू योर फ्रेंड Vladimir Putin and can you negotiate something, and we will really appreciate, क्योंकि इंडिया के अलावा ऐसी कोई कंट्री नहीं है जो इमर्जिंग सुपर पावर है जो इन दो बड़े विश्व गुरुओं का लिंक बना सके। तो इस पे बारे में आपका क्या ख्याल है? और ये भी बात मैं ऐड कर दूं कि जब ट्रम्प ने कॉल्स ली प्रेसिडेंट इलेक्ट बनने के बाद, तो उसके बाद ब्रिटिश, नेतन्याहू, इजरायली और यूरोपियन कंट्रीज के बाद कोई नीचे सबसे आखिर में लिखा हुआ था people from Narendra Modi from India or MBS from Saudi Arabia were also people who exchanged a conversation with Donald J. Trump. उन्होंने मतलब बॉदर भी नहीं किया कि वो मेंशन करें और हाईलाइट करें उस डिटेल में। So where do you see?
देखें सकलैन, देखें मेरी बात सुने, इंडिया इज एन इम्पोर्टेंट कंट्री, इट इज अ मेजर प्लेयर इन द वर्ल्ड, 1.5 बिलियन लोगों का मुल्क जो है ना वो अनइम्पोर्टेंट नहीं हो सकता, ठीक है। लेकिन इंडिया की अपनी जो है ना वो इंटरनल डायनामिक्स है, हम इंडिया को एक जो है वो होमोजेनस कंट्री के तौर पर नहीं देख सकते, और उसकी सबसे बड़ी रीजन ये है कि मोदी जो है ही हैज ऑलरेडी पीक्ड। इस दफा वो कह रहा था आपकी बार 400 बार, वो 240 सीटें जीता है, ठीक है। वो इसका मतलब है कि फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम जो उसकी पिछली दफा की जो स्ट्रेंथ थी, जिसमें वो कुकड़ की तरह करता फिर रहा था ना, कभी माइनॉरिटीज को मार रहा था, मुसलमानों को, क्रिश्चियंस, ये वो रोहिंग्या फलाना, जो करना चाह रहा था कर रहा था, ठीक है ना। मंदिर जो है वो नए बन रहे थे, मस्जिदें गिर रही थी, मुसलमानों को लिंच किया जा रहा था, क्रिश्चियंस को, इवन जो बेचारे दलित हैं उनको भी लिंच किया जा रहा था, ठीक है ना। उसने एक अजीबोगरीब खौफ का माहौल बनाया हुआ था और उसको ख्याल था कि उसका जो सितारा है ना वो इसी तरह उरूज पर चढ़ता जाएगा, नहीं हुआ, ठीक है। इस वजह से कि इंडिया जो है उसके इंडियंस ने दे हैव बेसिकली स्पोकन अगेंस्ट हिम। उसकी सीटें जो पहले 300 से ज्यादा थी वो रिड्यूस होके 240 हो गई हैं। आपने देखा बावजूद उसकी कोशिश के, जो एक जिसमें हमारा बड़ा इंटरेस्ट होता है कि जो इंडियन कश्मीर है उसके अंदर दोबारा से बहुत अरसे के बाद फारूक अब्दुल्ला का बेटा जो है वो दोबारा चीफ मिनिस्टर बना है। जो साउथ का इंडिया है वो बिल्कुल और तरह ऑपरेट करता है, ठीक है ना। जो ईस्ट का इंडिया है वो बिल्कुल और तरह ऑपरेट करता है। ये जो काउ बेल्ट है और ये जो सारा का सारा एरिया है ना महाराष्ट्र का, जिसके अंदर अडतिया नाथ जैसे लोग बैठे हुए हैं, सैफरॉन बेल्ट जो है वो आहिस्ता आहिस्ता लूज कर रही है। वाई? बिकॉज उन्होंने ये देखा कि भाई मोदी जो है वो नाम हमारा लेता है लेकिन बेनिफिट उसका जो है वो अडानी अंबानी को हो रहा है, ठीक है ना। वो करोड़ों नहीं अरबों का बिजनेस रोज का कर रहे हैं। तो उस सूरत में वो ट्रंप का यार है ये नहीं है, लेकिन ही हैज ऑलरेडी लॉस्ट हिज विगर इन इंडिया। अब वो यहां से किस तरह आगे उठेगा कि कांग्रेस जो पिछली दफा डेसिमेट हो गई थी अब उसकी 90 सीटें हैं। दे हैव सब्सटैंशियल पोजीशन इन इनसाइड लोकसभा। पहली दफा ये हुआ है कि राहुल गांधी जो है ही इज नाउ, मतलब उतना बड़ा चैलेंज तो नहीं बना लेकिन ही इज अ सब्सटैंशियल चैलेंज। व्हेन ही स्टैंड्स अप इन लोकसभा एंड मेक्स अ स्पीच पीपल लिसन टू हिम। दैट मीन्स कि अगर फर्स्ट किया वो ब्लॉक ऑलरेडी मौजूद है, बाज जो यूनियन की जो दूसरी स्टेट्स हैं वो अपने 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 इलाकों के अंदर जो है उनकी अपनी हुकूमतें हैं। तो मोदी जो है ना वो अब ही विल बी फोर्स्ड टू प्ले एन इंटरनेशनलिस्ट रोल। व्हाई? बिकॉज एट होम ही हैज बीन बीटन, यू नो ही इज इन पावर, लेकिन उसको कोई भी चीज करने के लिए अब उन छोटी जमातों के साथ मिलकर काम करना पड़ेगा जो उसको पहले नहीं करना पड़ा था। वो अपने उसने लेसन सीखने पड़ेंगे उसको कि डेमोक्रेसी जो है ना इस तरह की जिसके अंदर मुख्तलिफ पार्टीज मिलकर काम करती हैं, कोलिशन गवर्नमेंट, और जो यानी अकेला बंदा होता है ना उसकी जो बदमाशी होती है वो उसकी ऑलरेडी छीनी जा चुकी है। तो उस सूरत में उसका मुकाबला किसके साथ है इस रीजन के अंदर? चाइना में, जहां प्रेसिडेंट शी को तो फिलहाल कोई चैलेंज नहीं कर रहा, पुतिन उसको कोई चैलेंज नहीं कर रहा, एमबीएस उसको कोई चैलेंज नहीं कर रहा, पाकिस्तान के अंदर फौज को कोई चैलेंज नहीं कर रहा, ठीक है ना। बांग्लादेश के अंदर जहां मुल्क था वो जो हसीना वाजद ऐसे भागी है कि वो उसको छुपने की जगह नहीं मिल रही, ठीक है। और उस रीजन के अंदर आप ये देखें इंडिया के आसपास जितने मुल्क हैं, यानी श्रीलंका के अंदर उसके बाद अब एंटी इंडिया हुकूमत है, मालदीव में एंटी इंडिया हुकूमत है, बांग्लादेश में एंटी इंडिया हुकूमत है, नेपाल में एंटी इंडिया हुकूमत है, पाकिस्तान में एंटी इंडिया हुकूमत है। तो सवाल ये कि अगर आप रीजन के अंदर चारों तरफ से ऐसे मुल्कों जहां आप उस तरह कंड्यूसिव तरीके से आगे ना बढ़ सकें, तो फिर आपने अगर फर्ज किया 12,000 मील दूर जाके मुल्क के साथ जुड़ना है तो आप जुड़ें। हम इंडियंस जो हैं एज इंटेलिजेंट पीपल, ऑल इंडियंस, दे विल नॉट डू दैट, और उसमें मोदी जो है उसको समझना पड़ेगा कि अगर उसने इसके बाद लेगेसी क्रिएट करनी है तो ही विल एक्चुअली हैव टू वर्क ऑन प्रोजेक्ट्स वेयर ही विल नाउ स्टार्ट। देखा ना पाकिस्तान के साथ फर्ज की एक मिसाल है, फ्रिवलेस मिसाल है, उसने क्रिकेट नहीं खेलने दी, इंडिया की टीम को नहीं आने दिया। अच्छा दुश्मनी ये है कि इतनी नहीं है जी, इंडिया ने पाकिस्तान नहीं जाना, यानी इंडिया ऑस्ट्रेलिया में खेल ले, इंडिया पाकिस्तान की सीरीज इंग्लैंड में हो जाए, इंग्लैंड पाकिस्तान की सीरीज दुबई में हो जाए, ठीक है, लेकिन पाकिस्तान नहीं जाएगा। पाकिस्तान को ऐसा कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं था। उसने पाकिस्तान के जो एक्टर्स वगैरह जाया करते थे बॉलीवुड भी बंद करा दिए, ठीक है ना। तो उसने कहा था जी हमने इनको टोटली आइसोलेट कर देना। तो उस वक्त भी मेरी जब इंडियन दोस्तों से बात होती थी मैं कहा यार आप एक ऐसे मुल्क को किस तरह आइसोलेट कर सकते हैं जो दूसरी साइड से खुला हुआ है, ठीक है ना, मिडल ईस्ट के साथ, दुनिया के साथ। लेकिन मेरा अपना ख्याल है कि मोदी जो है उसने अगर डोलंड को, उनके जो दोस्त हैं डोलंड वाट्स जो है ना ट्रंप, उनको जाकर दोबारा जप्पी डालनी है तो डालें, लेकिन मेरा ख्याल है कि उनकी पॉलिसी सिर्फ ये होगी कि जितनी मैक्सिमम बेनिफिट वो ले सकें चाइना की जो है ना हुआ दिखा के अमेरिका से, वो डेफिनेटली जरूर करेंगे। और वो हर मुल्क को एक जो है ना वो राइट होता है कि वो अपने इंटरेस्ट के अंदर ट्राई टू सिक्योर द बेस्ट फॉर इट्स ओन पीपल।
Right. Thank you very much for today, Amir Bhai, or we're going to have another show. And obviously, ये तो अब unfold होगा कि डोनाल्ड ट्रंप आगे क्या करता है क्या नहीं करता, how what will be the American foreign policy. So
जनवरी के बाद देखेंगे उसको।
हाँ जी, आपकी कोई फाइनल कमेंट है तो दें, वरना फिर just
आई थिंक मतलब इट्स pretty late for me here. मैंने अभी नेटफ्लिक्स
हाँ
पे एक फिल्म भी देखनी है, ठीक है ना। सो थैंक यू वेरी मच एंड थैंक यू मैम। माहम आज खामोश थी. माहम का आज जो
नहीं.
माहम का आज जो स्टेटस था वो पैलेस्टाइन वाला था, ऑब्जर्वर स्टेटस था उसका.
Mm. It happens sometimes. कभी-कभी हो
I think what I had to say, I said it in the start anyway, so it was all good.
जाता है.
ठीक है.
Anyway, thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Amir sir, for joining us. Subscribe the channel, press the bell button so that you get regular updates whenever we're live. We're coming live soon again. Till then, have a nice day, nice evening, and have a good day, I guess. Bye bye.